Well, hi and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to CEBI's The Art of Delegation webinar. We are glad to have you with us. My name is Robin Taylor, and I'm the Manager of Member Services here at Chief Executive Boards. Next slide. And clearly, I am not Kevin Minton. I am filling in for Kevin today. He has a conflict and was unable to join us. So I'll be filling in for him with my twangy accent, so please bear with me. Most of you are already familiar with CEBI and what we do, but for those who are new, just a quick background. We are an executive peer advisory service with our headquarters in Greenville, South Carolina. We do have local boards on the East Coast and in the Midwest, and those groups meet quarterly, and then the entire membership meets twice a year in different locations. And you can certainly learn more about Chief Executive Boards on our website at chiefexecutiveboards.com. And one of the things that we've focused on this year is having our President's Circle webinars. This will be the third in the series of 6. And these can be found, the ones that have already taken place this year can be found on our website, as well as webinars from previous years. And this can be offered to CEBI members as well as their employees. And you can sign up on the CEBI website. So a few housekeeping items before we begin. The webinar will last approximately 45 minutes. And if you have a question, you can put it in the chat box and we'll address all of those questions at the very end. And again, it is being recorded and will be available probably at the beginning of next week. All right, let's get started. It is my privilege to introduce you to our presenter, David Rippey. David Rippey is the owner and founder of Celestia International, and his business focuses on strategic planning, executive development, marketing communications, and business development. And as you can see from this slide, he has an extensive background with working with businesses, creating business strategies. He is a well-known figure with CEBI members, as he is one of our facilitators at our national summits, and we love having him there. And he is the key presenter in all of our President's Circle webinar series. And I should let everyone know that David is fighting a bit of a cold, but he is going to be a trooper and powering through this webinar with us. So David, we do appreciate you doing that, and welcome today. And I'll turn the session over to you now.
Hey, thank you very much. So I'll apologize in advance if I have to put you on pause so I can sneeze or cough or something. Thank you for taking time to participate in this presentation on the art of delegation. I really appreciate it. Today, I'm going to share one of the most important management techniques available that can help you improve your teams and grow your business, and that's the art of delegation. Art of delegation is a complement to the 2 previous webinars on foolproof decision-making and flawless execution. So let's see if any of these things are familiar to you. If you're like most business executives and managers, you have too much work to do and not enough time. And chances are there are groups or certain people in your company that regularly miss their deadlines, and you likely cover for them. Now, maybe that doesn't happen in your organization, but in most organizations, it's true. Deadlines get missed. But most of us would love to work less and make more, which is impossible if others aren't pulling their weight or if you have to do their work for them. So to be a great leader, to grow your company, you have to learn to delegate. It's just an imperative. You can't do it all yourself. You might have been able to do it when your organization was smaller, but it's really hard to do in today's work environment where everybody's already doing a lot. So here's a little quote on by Eli Broad, who's an American billionaire, an entrepreneur and billionaire. And his claim to fame in this quote is the inability to delegate is one of the biggest problems with managers at all levels. We'll go into a little bit about why that is and what you then can do about it. So here's a little bit of the imperative. The average person today works at about 50% capacity. And managers need to tap in and motivate the other 50% of that time, that other 50% of capacity. The job of a manager, amongst other things, is to develop people. And delegation is about how to bring out the best in others so that you can get from 50% to maybe 75% or 80%. It's going to be very hard to get 100% of the people to give 100% effort, but I'm sure most of you have been in companies or work with somebody who is a good go-to guy or go-to gal who seems to work at about 110%. So they do exist, but you're not going to get it out of everyone. But if you can go from 50% to 80%, that'd be a huge win inside the company. So what is delegation? There's a little definition up here on the screen. And basically, it's a simple definition. You assign responsibility for doing something, such as a task or project, to someone else. And most efficient entrepreneurs, business owners, and managers delegate because it really allows them to focus on more impactful tasks that require their full attention. So if you're if you're in the weeds doing mundane things that somebody else should be doing, it's going to be very hard for you to focus on the things that are going to move your company forward. So why is that important? Well, it's important because delegation promotes development and enhancement of individuals, which in turn increases their loyalty. It reduces turnover. It allows much more work to get done faster because you have more people working on different things than, say, perhaps you doing it all. And this is true whether you're the owner of a company, the president of a company, the manager of a department, whatever it is. If you delegate, you're going to get more work done faster, which means you're going to have decreased delays, you're going to have increased motivation and job satisfaction, because when you delegate off important tasks, people like to feel like they're part of something, and they like to feel like they're contributing, and that enhances their motivation and their job satisfaction. It also stimulates their creativity, and then you get ideas that maybe you couldn't think of on your own that could be a great win for the company. And then lastly, it creates a very positive culture in your business environment. So it might not seem like it, but delegation is hard for many managers. It's really, really hard thing to do. Many people, especially people who like built their business around their skill set, their capabilities, it's hard to let go because people tend to like to micromanage, pull yourself up by the bootstraps. But that's really a lack of trust in those around you. And I'm not saying that you should just automatically trust everyone that you give a task to or a series of tasks to, but you have to trust some people or you're never going to be able to grow. And micromanagement harms that. Now, if you've ever said the phrase or you ever have heard the phrase, it's easier just to do it myself, that's a sure sign that you're micromanaging or you don't have trust in those around you. Another factor in why it's hard for many managers to delegate is the white knight syndrome. It's a psychological thing, and what happens is people actually subconsciously, they want to be the hero. They want to come in on the white horse and save the day. So they inadvertently or subconsciously or incidentally set it up so that they have to come in and fix things. But if you look at when you've had that done to you, when you look at if you've seen it when you do it to others, how do you think it makes others feel? Well, if you come in and you say, no, I want it done this way, it makes people feel inept, makes them feel confused, makes them feel worthless, and makes them feel insecure. So it's not a good way to grow a team. So you got to watch out for the white knight syndrome. I was pretty proud of that galloping horse there. So how do you delegate the right tasks to the right people? Well, the first thing to do is to think through the job. You decide what is to be done and what result you want. So that sounds like an easy thing to do, but the reality is that sometimes when we delegate things, we're not clear on what we want. We don't set the proper expectation. We haven't really decided what we want to be done, and we're unclear on what we really want to achieve. So think that through, or if you're not going to think it through, discuss it with the person you're delegating with and come to some consensus. It's important for step number 2 to set performance standards. So what does success look like? If you don't know where you're going, any direction will get you there. So if you have performance standards, then you can measure those, and then you can know, okay, well, if we achieve X, then that's success to me, or that's success to our company, or to our department or project. And the third thing to do, and I realize this is simplistic, is determine a schedule with milestones and deadlines. Don't just give somebody a task to do, a project to do, and then not check in on it on a regular basis to make sure that they're, let me say this a different way. You need to determine a schedule with milestones and deadlines, and then have the person that you delegate to report back on those milestones and deadlines to ensure it's on track. It sets expectation for them, sets expectation for the project, and it sets a good expectation for you, and allows you both or all parties to communicate with each other properly. So there are 7 steps in learning how to delegate. This is where it gets a little complicated, because most people just say, okay, I'll talk to George, I'll bring him in, I'll give him this, and maybe he'll get it right. So you got to start with picking the right person. The reason is that if you pick the wrong person for a key task, it's really like the number one reason why things fail. You have the wrong person on the job. You need to match the requirements of the job to the abilities of the person. So be sure that the person you delegate the task to is actually capable of doing the job. If you have a highly technical project you want somebody to work on, but you're dealing with a person who is not good with detail, or not good with numbers, or doesn't have any kind of engineering background, don't give them a highly technical project. Don't delegate a highly technical project for them to work on. Delegate effectively to the right first person. So this frees you up to do more things of higher value. The more essential your tasks you can teach to delegate to others, the greater time you have to do things that only you can do. And we all have things inside our organizations that only we can do. So there are certain things you just will not be able to delegate, but there are many, many, many things that you can delegate. So it's important to make sure that you're giving away the right things, and that you're keeping the things that only you can handle, but not giving yourself a false sense of security that you're the only guy. You got to be clear in your mind that you're the only person that can handle it. Number 4 is to delegate smaller tasks to newer staff to build their confidence and competence. And it's also a way to test to see, how well they're going to do their job. The 5th is to delegate the entire job. 100% responsibility for a task is a major performance motivator. If you say, George, here's what I want you to do. You own this. You put together the team. You have the budget. It's yours. So it's a great motivator for George or Georgette. And the more often you assign responsibilities to the right people, the more competent they become. So the 6th thing is, we talked about a little bit in previous slides, you delegate clear outcomes. Make your outcomes measurable. But if you can't measure it, because if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. Inspect what you expect, and what gets measured gets done. So explain what's to be done, how you would think it should be done, and the reasons for doing it in the first place. So don't just say, Kevin, I want you to do X. Talk through the job with the person. Be clear on what you want, and be clear that that person understands what you're looking for, and have them repeat it back to you. And then the 7th thing is to delegate with participation and discussion. Invite questions, be open to suggestions. And there's a direct relationship between how much people are invited to do and the results that you get. So be clear about time, money, and resources they have to complete the work. If you go and you delegate something and you say, look, we have a $20,000 budget for this, and a person comes back and says, yeah, I can get this done. It's only 50 grand and it's going to take 17 people. Well, clearly they didn't have the right expectation. You didn't have the right discussion with them, right communication about what was expected. So you have to be clear about time, money, and resources. The resources part's important because you can't have a person who's assigned a new project or delegated a new project to go and pick people off from other departments who have other work that they're supposed to be doing. So they need to be duly deputized to do that, and they need to say, okay, this is my team of 3 people. I'm going to take one from HR, one from sales, one from wherever, maybe the shop floor, and then we'll put that together. So just I can't state it enough. Be clear about time, money, and resources they have to complete the work. And you need people to walk away in such a way after you do these 7 steps. You need them to walk away in such a way that people feel like, this is my job, I own it. Hopefully that makes sense to everyone. So when should you delegate tasks? Well, for a delegated task to be effective, ask these 4 questions. Who can do this job instead of you? So you might believe in your mind that only you can do it, but I can tell you for a fact that 90% of the stuff that needs to get done in a company can be done by somebody else. You should be working on strategy, vision, and where the company's going to go. Who can do this job better than you? If you're a true leader and you're hiring right, you're surrounding yourself with people that have talents in specific areas that are greater than yours in those same areas. So who can do it better? And then who can do this job at a lower cost than you? And on the next slide, we'll take you through how you figure that out, which shouldn't be hard if you're a owner or a senior executive in a company. Almost anybody you delegate to at a lower rung in the organization is going to be less expensive than you are. And then the 4th question, which is a really good question to ask, is, can this activity be eliminated? What would happen if the job were not done at all? Many routine tasks and activities in a company could easily be eliminated with no loss of productivity. Now, I've seen this over and over and again in a company. Keep doing the same things because maybe you've been doing it that way for the last 10 years. But one of the exercises that we do pretty often in strategy sessions is it's called a start. Excuse me, I'm fumbling my words here a little bit in this fog I'm in. It's called a start, stop, continue doing. So what you do is you bring your senior team together or your managers together or department heads together, and you say, okay, what should we start doing? What should we stop doing? That's where the number 4 comes in. Can this activity be eliminated? And then what should we continue to do? So it's amazing how many activities go on in a business and in our private lives that could be easily discontinued, totally discontinued, with no loss or inconvenience to anyone. So that's a good place to look around your company and say, what could we eliminate? So the next slide is going to be related to how do you calculate your value per dollar? So the first thing you do is you take your annual salary, and these are rough numbers, so don't take it as gospel, but approximately you take your annual salary, you add your benefits, which are going to be north of 25%. You multiply by 2 for the overhead that the company carries, and then you divide it by 2,080 hours, which is how much most people work in a year. Don't put in all the extra hours you work. If you're like most executives I know, you're not working 40-hour work weeks, you're working 50, 60 hours a week. Don't calculate it at 60 hours a week. Calculate it at 40 hours a week, which gives you your 2,080. So if you do those things, your annual salary plus benefits, multiply by 2, and then divide by 280, you get your hourly cost per value. As an example, a $100,000 salary is about $120 an hour. So if you calculate that and you say, okay, well, I'm worth about $120 an hour, and not that that's an ego thing, walk around saying, hey, I'm worth $120,000 an hour, $120 an hour. You say, okay, well, we have a new person in sales and marketing who could probably do that research for me and come back with, their findings, a summary of the research, and that person's making, 40 grand a year, that's a very affordable way for me to get that done and get a quality work effort that then I can then review. So now we're going to go into this webinar is going faster than I had anticipated. So now we're going to go into 6 things that you should do to delegate. So we talked about this a little earlier. Match the person to the job. And as Robin had said, this presentation is going to be online probably in a few days. And I'm sure if you hit Robin up, she'll send you the slides, or you can hit me up and I'll send you the slides too. So match the person to the job. The only really accurate predictor of future performance is someone who's done it before. If you know they've been there, you know they've done that, then your chances are they're going to get it right. So don't delegate an important task to a person who's not performed that task in a satisfactory way in the past. It's really quite unfair to expect a person who's not done it before to perform at a sufficient level of quality when they're given the job for the first time. So that's kind of like the white knight syndrome, where you put the wrong person on the job and then you have to come in and save the day. So again, you agree on what is to be done. You discuss the job with that person and agree upon what is to be done. The more you discuss to achieve clarity, the faster the job will be done once the person starts on it. It's important that you get absolute clarity. It just, if we've all been involved in projects, we've all delegated things out where we weren't clear, and the person comes back and they've gotten it wrong, and it's a little frustrating. And maybe you've burned 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, and you're no closer to where you were. Well, you can't get that time back. So if you agree on what's to be done and you have clarity around it, the chances are when the person comes back to you at your milestone check-ins, you're going to be pleased. So the third thing to do is to explain how the job should be done. Explain your preferred approach or method of working. Explain how you'd like to see the job done and how you or someone else has done it successfully in the past. So as an example, you might say, well, when we did our market research on XYZ company, the first thing we did was we went to their website, we investigated trade associations, we joined this, we looked at all these things. These are the things that we did that made our project successful in the past. This is where I think you ought to start. Now, if you're explaining how the job should be done, then you should be having a discussion, not just this is what I want you to do, this. Don't be autocratic about it. The fourth thing to do, which is very, very important, is ask the person to feed your instructions back to you in his or her own words. There's nothing that illuminates that you've been clear and that proper communication has taken place by having the person tell you, this is what I heard, this is what I think you want. And you'll also be amazed at how often when that person feeds it back to you, that what they heard is not what you're asking for. That happens quite a lot. So ask the person to feed your instructions back in his or her own words. Have them explain to you what you've just explained and agreed upon. And again, it's the only way you can be sure that the other person actually understands the job assignment. Please do not assume that the person that you're talking to gets it. Make sure that there's light in their eyes and they really understand. That's the biggest thing that's going to cause failure, is lack of understanding. So then number 5 is just set a deadline and set a deadline and schedule for completion of the task. At the same time, arrange for regular reporting, and then you invite feedback and questions if there are any delays or problems. So you might say, okay, well, how do I do that? Well, you manage by exception. So at the start, if I were to do something like this, I might say, all right, this is what I want you to do. Have that person repeat it back to me. Tell them, I think we can have this done in 60 days or whatever the timeline is. But ask them, what I want you to do is go and look at this and come back to me in a couple of days and tell me what you think is reasonable. Is 60 days the right number? Is it 90 days? Is it 45 days? What do you think is the right deadline for this? And then have them come back to you when they come back to you with, let's say that you want to launch a new initiative on the web. Well, that's like a bullet on a slide, but what you really want to do is you want to know what the 17 or 19 or 29 things underneath are that person has to do, and when they're going to do it by, or who they're going to assign it to, and how they're going to check in. So you set a deadline and a schedule for the completion of the overall task, and you can do the Stephen Covey thing, which is begin with the end in mind, and you can use a workback schedule. And you ask for regular reporting, and it'll be up to you to say, well, I want to know what's happening every week, every 2 weeks. I wouldn't go for monthly. A lot can go askew if you have monthly check-ins versus weekly or bi-weekly. And then invite feedback and questions if there are any delays and problems. So then it comes to item number 6, which is to manage by exception. Well, what's that mean? Well, management by exception is a powerful time management tool that allows you to work a lot more efficiently with other people. So if you have a weekly check-in or a bi-weekly check-in and the job is on track and on schedule, then you don't need updates. You don't need to go to somebody's desk and say, where are we? You're going to have your weekly or your bi-weekly meeting, and that person's going to come back to you and say, this is where we are. Now, so what does manage by exception mean? Well, manage by exception means that something went wrong and I need to get more feedback from you. So if you don't hear from the person you assigned it to, then just assume everything's going well. But again, don't allow so much time to pass between when you assign it and when you're getting your reporting back. So again, the individual only has to report back to you when an exception occurs or there's a problem with the job getting done on time. You just want to make sure that's the case and that it's going to happen with the agreed upon level of quality. So this is detailed stuff here. Sounds simple, but it is detailed. So you're probably going to want these slides and to read through them in the future so that you can reference it. There's lots of books on delegation out there, lots of stuff on the web. This material was taken from 2 sources. Brian Tracy did a nice job on a delegation workshop, and then also I did a lot of work with Sandy Blaha in the past, who's a performance consultant. So it's based on the work of those 2 people. Sorry, I seem to be fading pretty fast here. So if you were on the last presentation, I introduced a team tool, which is called a Who, What, When. And a Who, What, When holds people and teams accountable for tasks. It's used in all management and planning meetings. Tasks are stated aloud by each participant, and you review to start the meeting in the same team. So this could be, how you're going to implement this. I would put it on a spreadsheet, and I would use it. And I would only have things on the spreadsheet. You can't see that here because these are all over the place in terms of different types of projects. But I would have who, what, when for a project, because normally what you're going to find is that on any given project, there's going to be a dozen, 2 dozen, 3 dozen who, what, whens. And you want to know who the person had assigned to, when their deadline is, and what it is they're going to be doing. And then you can have any notes that you want in column D. It's a very, very, very powerful tool. If you're not using it in your organization, I highly recommend that you implement it as soon as you can and start using it at all your meetings. Certainly use it when you're delegating to someone. The last tool is a management reporting tool for individuals. And again, we talked about this on the last webinar. And it's called a 515. It's called a weekly 515. If you're a busy executive and you really don't have time to sit down for an hour every week and find out where a person is, then have them prepare a 515, which is by the end of the day. And if you've assigned a manager to run a project and that person has direct reports under them or people assigned, have them get 515s from their reports or their people on the project, and then have them summarize it and put it into the 515 for you. You don't need to see everybody who's working on a project. You don't need to see everybody's 515. Let the person that you delegated it to be responsible, take ownership, and hold people accountable. So it's an easy document to fill out. It takes 15 minutes. It's the top 5 things that were accomplished this week. It's the top 5 things for the coming week, and it's any challenges or roadblocks. I use this all the time when I'm helping companies to manage to their personnel, whether that's in sales or other areas of the company. And it's highly effective because what happens is you get the document and you review it, and then you can type into the documents. And this is not a handwritten deal here. You need it to be typed up so it's legible, it's thought through, and it is by end of business. So you read through it, and then what I do is I use a different color font, and I'll write my comments back, and then I'll send it to the person who sent it to me. And within, a half an hour to an hour, without me investing much time at all, I can get total clarity on what the person put into this report. It's a very, very easy thing to do. It works wonders. And I know some of the people from CEBI that I've worked with have implemented this to great results as well. So I don't know if I talked too fast because I'm not feeling well, but that's basically the webinar on how to delegate. If you want to talk to me individually about more detail because you're vexed or perplexed by somebody that you've tried to delegate to and you weren't able to get anything out of them, I'm more than happy to take some time to talk that through with you. I love CEBI and I love being part of it, so I'm here to help anybody that I can. So we do have time for any questions. Robin, I don't know if we got any, but if we do, I'm happy to answer them.
Right now I have 2, but if you guys have any additional questions, you can put it in the chat box and we'll ask David because we do have a few minutes. The first one I have is it possible to delegate too much?
Well, sure, it is. In fact, I've always had people in my organization that have been like my go-to guy or my go-to gal. And I regularly take their temperature to make sure I'm not giving them too much, because typically go-to people, they will take on anything that you ask them for, anything that you ask them to do. So I delegate to them, but I also make sure that they're not underwater. And most people can't do that. They won't raise their hand and say, I don't know, or I'm lost, or I'm over my head. They won't do that. So you have to elicit that out of them and make sure that you're not taking your go-to guy or your go-to gal and putting too many bricks on their back so that they can't complete their tasks, because it'll just stress them out. And if they're stressed out, they're not going to do a good job. So I regularly make sure that I'm not overwhelming people. And it's a good practice to not just have one go-to person. You want several go-to people in the organization that you can rely on and with different areas of expertise. So yeah, you can delegate too much, and you can also delegate the wrong things. So that's that answer.
Okay. And the next one, let me get back to the chat box, is how do I determine what things to delegate or let go of?
Well, I like to say, I like to do a little time and motion study on myself. And I regularly ask myself, how much time do I think I'm going to spend on this? How much time am I going to spend on this other thing? And is that really worth my time? So the first place I would start is I would look at where I'm spending my time. It's important for every executive to do that. And I would suspect that you'll be quite surprised at how much time you are spending on things that are sort of below your pay grade. Not that you're better than anyone else, not that you want to act better than anyone else, but it's just not a good use of your time given that you're running an organization or running a department. So I would look at things that you can easily give away, that are easy to grasp. I'd start small, and I'd start looking around for who your true leaders are underneath you. And I would bring them in and I would talk to them and I'd say, I want to start giving you some more responsibility. I want to delegate. What are some of the things that you're good at? Now, if you're doing annual reviews, you should know those things already. Should have a good sense of what people are good at in the organization or not good at. And so I would start small. If you have an executive admin, obviously they can open your mail, they can schedule your meetings, they can book your travel, they can take care of a lot of things that are like jelly beans in a jar. You look at a bunch of jelly beans in a jar and you say, okay, there's 81 in there. And then when they count them all up, there's actually 152. So jelly beans in a jar, it's very important that you don't get bogged down with unnecessary things. So many of you have heard me say this phrase in the past: don't sacrifice the necessary for the sake of the urgent. Give away things that other people can clearly handle. Don't be that white knight. Make sure that you're using command and control, and that if a sales rep comes to you and you're the head of the organization, well, that sales rep really ought to be talking to your sales manager or your VP of sales or whoever that person reports to. Don't allow them to jump ahead of the queue and go directly to you. So make sure that you have good command and control, and that you're delegating things off that will help you free you up to do some bigger project that you're interested in getting done, that will help to fulfill the vision and the mission of the company.
Okay, great, David. Thank you so much. That wraps up our questions. And as mentioned before, if you have any questions for David after the fact, his contact number and email address is at the bottom of this slide. David, we really appreciate you being here and sharing all this information with us. To the participants, we hope you found this helpful, and we invite you to contact David, me, or Kevin with any questions, and we will have this recording to you and available next week. Thank you, and I hope everyone has a wonderful afternoon.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, guys.